Bud Kirchner in our Summer Classics series, a reprise from Entrepreneurs, the Dobson series. And in that series, an entrepreneurship mentor has the last word. Here it is.
I really like the man, probably because he's real. I liked him a lot. When I say he's real is because I find him having a good approach. He's using fundamental values. He's honest. His approach is based on the people in the business. So his approach is a bit different than what we normally do when it comes the time for people to fix companies having problems. And I find him very endearing because I notice when he talks about his success, he always uses the word we instead of I. So his success is a team success. So it's very important, I believe. He also has a very good approach. He is very disciplined in his approach. He uses the same model all the time. And in his approach, he uses a long-term view, which distinguishes himself, again, from the others. He's there to help the companies to find the solutions to their problem. And he doesn't run away. He stays there. He has or maintains a small investment, 10 to 15%. So he does care about the success of the company. But also he leaves the management take ownership of the future of the company. And I believe it's very a significant part of his success. He's really working on the ground. Like, he likes to visit the companies. He doesn't do it from his office. He goes on the ground, he visits the companies, he wants to see with his eyes and feel really how the company works and how he can help them to solve the problems. So effectively a good part of his success is because he's using the good fundamental values. It's quite inspiring to hear him talking about the foundation. The Hidden Angel Foundation is the name of his foundation. And when he talks about it, it's very convincing. We see that he cares about helping the kids. He's very, he really wants to help the society, to give back to society. So when he talks about his weeks, the highlight of his weeks, he said that it's when he reads about the progress of the kids that go through the program that he and his foundation support. And he's really proud of it. So not only he gives back to the society in terms of fixing companies, but also by helping the kids overcoming the barriers that they have because of their sickness.
Bud Kirchner, a reprise from Entrepreneurs, the Dobson series. The man you're about to meet has won Entrepreneur of the Year twice. I don't think anyone else has ever done that. He is famous for being a company doctor, for rescuing organizations that nobody wants to touch as they sink slowly into the abyss, pulls them up out of there, fixes them up, and prepares them again to function in the market properly. And yet he's always done that with high ethics, without the kind of greed that you have seen too much of on Wall Street. At the same time, with his wife Sandra, he started a foundation devoted to hidden angels. And we touched on both topics. Here once again is Bud Kirchner of Alabama. Bud Kirchner, winning Entrepreneur of the Year is a big deal. You can wear it as a badge of honor for years and years. It's like winning Wimbledon. But generally, unlike Wimbledon, you win it once. And you are the Bjorn Borg of this thing, because, or the Roger Federer, because you've won it twice in a row. Let's talk about that. How did that happen?
Well, it was quite a while ago now, but what I do remember about it is that really each of the awards recognized one of the two things that are most important to me in business. The first was for building a world-class company. The second was for fixing a world-class company. And the reality is those are the two aspects of business that I've devoted my career to. So to have a recognition related to each of them was pretty important to me.
And Bjorn Borg went for 5. You're not, are you thinking of that?
No, I'm closer to retiring than I am to going for number 5.
And you're known as the, you say fix, and you're known, I saw in the research, the Mr. Fix-It of the venture capital world. You will take a mess and try to deliver it back to its shareholders, or new shareholders, in working shape. It's called a workout, usually. It's very different from hedge funds or just venture capitalists who just want to sell out when something grows.
Right.
It's kind of messy, isn't it? It's hard.
Well, it's hard, but the reality is that I learned those skills by helping to build companies from the grassroots up. And so once you know what makes a good company, it's relatively straightforward to put it back on track once it gets off track. So we have a fairly disciplined approach, and we go into these situations. It's a kind of work that's in fairly high demand because almost every company goes off track at some point. We tend to think of it as a stigma, but the reality is, for small and medium enterprise, if you're working as aggressively as you can to build something from nothing, inevitably you are going to go off track. It's part of the process. And so we're pretty proud of the fact that we've got a reputation of being able to put those companies back on track and taking them into another success story. Back to the Entrepreneur of the Year award, the company there that I fixed, we actually went on to, at the same time we were fixing that company, 100 competitors went bankrupt. And when we finished, for the next 5 years, we were in the top 5 companies in the country for revenue and shareholder value creation.
That the others went bankrupt tells you it was a troubled sector,
Yes,
right there.
that's right.
What sector was it?
That sector was aquaculture.
Aquaculture, in other words, in like hydroponic and.
Well, it's aquaculture in the general sense is growing fish under intensive culture.
Okay. Yeah.
It can be shellfish, it can be fin fish. We started, the bankrupt company we started with was a fin fish company. When we finished, we were in several different species, and we had done acquisitions around the world.
So you inject capital. You don't just fix. You really have to bring in new parts and new equipment, in a sense, meaning capital.
Well, if you think about making a company successful, it's a little bit like a barrel with one stave is inevitably shorter than the others, and that's where the water runs out. So to fix a company, you start with fixing that first stave, and that might be the need for capital, it might be the need for more disciplined management, it might be the need for a more aggressive marketing campaign, access to international markets. So the fixing of the company is all about first things first, dealing with the first stave that's short, then another one becomes short, and eventually you've built a successful company.
And you're a little bit, I guess, like the doctor on the battlefield doing triage. You're solicited a lot. You have to decide if it's fixable, and that's a tough decision. How do you make that? Is it gut feel or analysis? You come in and say, no, I'm not going to touch that one, I can't do it. This one I can do. How do you make that determination?
Well, I think probably on the back of a 40-year career, there's a lot of pattern recognition. I can look at a company, I can get a pretty good sense of whether there's the right ingredients there and they've just been sort of deployed inappropriately, or whether or not it's a flawed business model, or the fundamental issue is there a value proposition that the market actually needs?
And so how important are people there, the quality, because I noticed in the research it comes back a lot, but flawed business model can be the market. Does it happen that you have great people in a lousy business model and you have to turn them down?
Well, if you have great people, I'd be inclined to take on great people no matter what the business model, because really it's always about business. It's analogous to the real estate saying about location, location, location. Small and medium enterprise is about people, people, people.
And when you come in, do you come in with a team that will sit there and sort of run it for a few months? Do you have a pattern there, a method?
Well, if we're dealing with what we would call a distressed or a company that's off track, the first thing we'll do is essentially an assessment. We'll determine what things are not working and which things are not working. We'll determine what the potential is for the company in the marketplace. We then formulate a plan. We build a plan that we think addresses all the needs of the company and dovetails better with the marketplace. Then we'll assemble a team amongst our people to go into the company. And then as quickly as we can, we will phase out of that company and bring in more permanent management. Because again, like an emergency room doctor, we're at our best in those acute situations. When we're in a distressed situation, when we're helping to build a company from the grassroots up, then we take a completely different approach, but the priorities remain the same.
And as I read a lot of the things you've done, I kept thinking of, this is a different story altogether, but Buffett has often made a lot of money on obscure little companies that he's taken care of, See's Candy and the Furniture Mart in Omaha with that lovely old lady who died at 90. But he kept them. Yep. He kind of fell in love with them, but they were good, and he worked hard at them. Yep. Do you ever fall in love enough that you keep it in your portfolio?
Well, we would inevitably keep an ownership interest. It's just our management team would tend to move on and put in a more permanent management team. So for sure, if we put a company back on its feet, by then we know it so well, we've become so personally involved in its success that we would always maintain an interest, an economic interest in that company.
But would you own 100% of it?
Rarely would we own 100% of any company because we're a small group and it's important to be somewhat diversified. So Generally, our ownership interest in our asset management business, for example, would be somewhere between 10 and 50%.
And you're not, in venture capital, there's always this kind of, this be-all and end-all, which is the exit strategy, where they're going to make a pile,
Right.
and people are always looking at the clock saying, when's our exit strategy? But that's usually with companies that they want to take public and so on.
Right.
I don't think this process is like that.
Well, there's always an exit component because companies inevitably need someone to be able to move on. It could be someone wants to retire. It could be an estate that needs to be settled. Companies rarely go on generation after generation with the same ownership. There's usually some transition. We've actually, one of the groups that we have within our group, our overall group, is dedicated to helping companies do these kind of transactions, to transition from one owner to another. Not because we're hell-bent to get out of deals, but because we recognize that ownership interest changes, people's priorities change, people get older, situations change.
And how does it work concretely with the phone on your desk? It's like calling the doctor, right? Help, I need help. When can you come over? How does it happen? People get your name, and they call you and say, Mr. Kirchner, I'm in trouble here. What can you do? Is that the way it...
Yeah, I'll give you a quick example. So not too long ago, I had a phone call just as you described, and it was from a group with a company in California, but with operations in Australia and Europe and several other countries. Said that they had, their instincts were things were not going as well as they should. These are the investors in the company. So asked if we would first just go and take a look-see. So we literally got on a plane, went to London, spent 3 20-hour days assessing the core of the operations, came back, reported to those shareholders some 55 issues that we had identified that seemed to not be as good as we thought they should be. And from there, the process that I described earlier. We went in, built the plan, and restructured the company.
And I would not want to miss a second topic that's very important, which is your social entrepreneurship, to which you devote a lot of time as well. It's the Hidden Angel Foundation. Let's talk about that. What is that?
Well, the Hidden Angel Foundation is, as you say, my effort at social entrepreneurism. My wife and I had a son who had a congenital problem that prevented him from being able to interact with the world around him. We discovered that when he was exposed to situations that would stimulate his senses, that his world lit up, that his life became enriched. And so when he passed away, we decided to start a foundation devoted to something called multisensory environments, and in his name we would make these available to children throughout North America. And
can we put a name on the, what illness was it?
His condition was called Sanfilippo syndrome.
I see. But multisensory MSEs can help, I'm told, all Alzheimer's patients, elderly patients, all kinds of autistic children. How does it work?
Well, if you think about, well, I mean, imagine this. You typically would touch 300 surfaces every 30 minutes. We all would. Inside, underneath our skin, we have miles of nerve endings. We have pressure sensors. We have cold sensors. We have all sorts of different apparatus that releases neurotransmitters, releases hormones. This is how we know we're alive. This is what lights up our day. Now imagine the world for a child or a senior citizen who are unable to interact with the world around them. Imagine how that must feel. So they tend to develop conditions where they fail to thrive, where they withdraw, because their life is not enriched. So the concept of multisensory environments is very simple. We develop facilities, generally inside of hospitals or schools or therapeutic clinics, where these children or senior citizens, in the case of Alzheimer's patients, are able to go in, and by accessing this equipment, they not only can interact with their environment, but they can actually influence their environment, which gives them a completely different perspective on the world around them.